Hello and welcome to the Vassals of Kingsgrave. We are back this time around to do a little book review, or dare I say book club, whatever you want to call it, for the latest novel from fantasy author Joe Abercrombie. The book is titled A Little Hatred. It is the first book in a new trilogy, following up 6 previously published books in what is called the First Law universe. My name is Zach, also known as Alias on the podcast device and Fire forums, and joining me we have...
This is Brett, White Raven on the forums.
This is Alex, known as Lucky Charms on the forums.
This is Greg, Claudius the Fool on the forums.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining me for this, and hopefully we'll have Amber, a.k.a. Amber Rocks, joining us at some point in the future. But in the meantime...
You're welcome.
I've never heard... No one's ever said that before. This is like a new experience for me. All right. All right, so before we actually get into the First Law book, rather A Little Hatred itself, I wanted to talk a little bit about the other books in the First Law universe, the other books that have been published in the past that have kind of led us to this point, and just kind of talk about how we all got into this series and why we like it. So let's start with you, Brett. I think you are probably the biggest fan of Joe Abercrombie among us, so kind of tell us how you got into it and what you think about his work.
Well, I got into it through Best Served Cold was actually the first one I ever read, not even realizing that there was a trilogy around it. And he does a very good job of not spoiling you just by not using people's names in other books, which is kind of frustrating when you know their names and he's not using them, but it's very interesting the way he does it. But I got into it through that, loved it, found out there was a trilogy, burned through those in a month. And then the next 2 came out in the next 2 years and loved the shit out of them. And then this one just came out and I love this one too.
And what about his books do you like?
He writes very cinematically and he does an excellent job of dialogue that just makes me chuckle to myself.
Yeah, it's a good balance of sense of humor, but also he really does know when to amp things up and really give you a cool scene for sure.
Thanks for including my thoughts, Zach.
Oh, no problem. How about you, Alex? How did you get into it, and what do you think of it?
I had finished A Song of Ice and Fire in spring 2012, and I was just in this afterglow of good fantasy, and I needed other stuff to read, and I had nothing to do that summer, so that was when I tried getting into Malazan, and I read the 5 published Abercrombie books all over that summer because Red Country had not come out yet. I spent a very long time thinking about how I could articulate my perspective without being reductive, I guess, because I know how much you love this series, Brett.
Hey, say what you want. It's how you feel.
No, we're going to go on.
If you want to throw a little hatred, it makes sense.
No, it's nothing like that. We're going to go on a little bit of a journey, but I have a point to make, I promise.
I'll buckle in.
So back in August, I read Lucian's A True Story. Lucian, the 2nd century Roman Syrian satirist and philosopher.
Here we go.
Which is a delightful parody of the Homeric epics.
It sounds quite highbrow.
But before he begins, he has this brief preamble, which I'll paraphrase a bit of. Just as it is for athletes and those concerned with the wellness of their bodies, consider the most important part to the relaxation afterwards to prepare for more labor. So too must the same principle apply to scholars and intellectuals, those who must relax and unbind their intellects to prepare for subsequent mental labor, or something like that.
Oh, and then, Brett, he's saying these books are potato chips. I know
where
he's going with these.
I'm not necessarily going to disagree with him.
And Lucian says, this is the task that I'm going to do. I'm not going to bore you with some historical inventory or some tedious philosophical introspection. And for myself, this is the niche that Abercrombie fulfills. I like all of these books. I think they're a lot of fun, with very snappy, well-written dialogue, very charming, iconic, unique characters with very distinct voices. But I don't think they're particularly substantive nor require any deep, intellectual or philosophical rigor to understand, compared to Ursula K. Le Guin or Gene Wolfe as far as literary works of fantasy fiction. I say as I adjust my monocle or whatever.
But I don't say that cigarillo.
I don't say that to be dismissive because I'm banging my fists on my desk. But things that are entertaining and well written are very important in contrast to things that are merely entertaining and schlockily put together. But it's not something that, because of who I am, would be, deeply passionate about. But if you want a fun and exciting, fast-paced, dark fantasy romp, anything Abercrombie writes in the first law sequence would be right up your alley.
So you mentioned like Ursula K. Le Guin and Gene Wolfe. So I mean, there's a lot of fantasy fiction out there that is kind of more modern than the stuff that they've put out. So are there any other series you'd say do manage to reach those levels of like literary or just depth?
Oh Jesus, throw him a softball.
Yeah.
I can guess what's coming here.
I just want to like set the in the context of like the modern fantasy world we live in now, like what is the barrier there?
I guess the stylings of the prose, I guess, like there's nothing that forces me to like sit down and like, oh, I need to like focus and understand what is going on. I don't know.
I actually absolutely agree with you. There's not a lot of depth.
That's part of the appeal. Yeah.
Yeah, there's not a lot of depth to them. They're not thinkers. Everything you want to know is right there on the page. It's not like Martin where you like read back through it and you're like, oh my God, this is right here the whole time. It's more just, this is the story. Take it or leave it. It's kind of like, like a Marvel movie. Like it's not a thinker, but you can enjoy watching it and you can enjoy watching it again and again.
Love the characters.
Yeah, but that's
not cinema. It's not cinema.
Yeah.
Okay, Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, just ask Martin.
Yeah.
Any Martin.
any Martin would say that, no matter which one. Yeah, this is just a thing, right? Like there's books you read to be literary, there's books you read for commercial fun and enjoyment, and that's just how it is. I do think these books do some, cool stuff, but I don't think that they're trying to like reach the highest echelon of deep thought or what have you. But before I get into what I think, Greg, how did you get into this? How did you get into the books, and what do you think of them?
Well, the first Abercrombie I read was the young adult trilogy that he did several years ago, the Shattered Sea series, which I don't remember. I assume Brett recommended him, or who actually like put it up in the vote for that one. But
right.
That was the first I'd heard
me.
of. It wasn't you?
No.
Well, it wasn't me. I don't know who it was. Anyway.
Go check the archive later.
Go check that from 2013.
I think it was Zach. I think it was Zach. He's playing it quiet.
It was not me, I promise.
But I really liked that series, and then I kind of forgot about it. I read the physical books for those, so I think I remember the characters from that series more than this series. But he'd been recommended to me. I know, Brett, you'd been trying to get me to read him for a while, and I think me and Amber, once we started, because we started our little Audible book club, and I think you recommended it for that. So I bought it, and then I shared my account with Amber. So me and Amber were reading it or listening to it at the same time, and then like asking Brett questions. He was like our guide through it, kind of like Alex and Zach were for me when I was reading the Baker books. But yeah, so I read them in order. I read the trilogy, and then I read the standalones. And then the only one I didn't read was I got like a third of the way through the short story collection and kind of just stopped. So I got to get back to that at some point. But I think that's everything he's written, right, Brett? Then including the young adult stuff?
Yeah. Young adult.
New adult, whatever. I forget.
That's the only thing I remember from that podcast is the new adult thing, which I still love.
Don't charge $25 for your book if it's not an adult book. So anyway, we don't have to get back into that. This one, clearly an adult book. It's $30.
Indeed. So for me, I think I'm kind of the newbie in the group in terms of Abercrombie. I did read was it Half a King, whatever back then, but that wasn't super into it. But I wanted to always read these because of the idea that they were supposedly more adult and just kind of more loved in general. So I got into the First Law about the end of 2018 and read through all the books, the first trilogy and all the standalones earlier this year, and I really, really, really love them. I think for me, the thing that Abercrombie does so well is character, particularly making sure that his characters have miserable times, which is something that I personally really enjoy. I love how steadfastly he's committed to the idea of his characters never getting into a good circumstance. Anytime you think, oh, things are going to turn, things are going to get better, he finds a way to make it all awful. And that's something I love. And I love the ways that he torments them. And I just think they're all such cool ideas. People like Sandan Glotka, people like like Logan Nine Fingers. They're just such cool, unique characters that have a lot going on that I really enjoy. And he does do all those other things while we talk about so many good humorous lines in there and so many good action sequences. He just has a feel for that I really enjoy.
The fact that the characters are always true to themselves, like they never seem like a different character when you're reading them.
That's true. Yeah, I think there's this tendency sometimes in fiction to like push your characters along in a direction to the goal of like character development or making them dynamic or what have you. But I'm kind of the belief that like people don't really change, you know, and sometimes when they're tested, they can show things that you wouldn't expect, but ultimately they're not going to just become like paragons of truth and justice, like people like Jezel, whatever his name, however you pronounce it.
Stop it! Don't call him that.
You know, you might expect him to become like this heroic character, but he really does not. Over the course of the first series. So speaking of that, speaking of, you know, some of the characters and the books of the past, what would you guys say is your favorite book among those in the First Law world published before A Little Hatred? How about you, Brett?
This is tough for me to pick because I like different ones for different things. Like, I think the best standalone, just single book is Best Served Cold because it's got a good story to it and you can just jump in, and it might be because it was the first one I read too. But I also think that The Heroes is great for its own thing, like a little one battle book that centers around these few characters. And then you got Red Country that's kind of like a Western almost, that they just like, it's kind of a revenge story, Western kind of thing. And I love that one too. So it's really hard for me to pick. And the trilogy is just like, it's one big book. The fact that you broke into 3 is fine, but it is really just one big book to me. And I love them all equally. I can't even pick one that I like better than the rest.
Fair enough. And yeah, I like how you say he kind of wears his inspirations on his sleeve in a way. Like he's willing to say like, yes, I'm writing like a Western here. I'm very deliberately trying to show how I would do that. And I think I just like that he's willing to so openly do something like that. Alex, what's your favorite?
Well, if we're A Little Hatred is probably my favorite, but if we're excluding that, man,
Why would we exclude one?
Oh, cool. So that was what Zach posited at the beginning.
Oh, I don't listen to Zach. Go ahead.
I guess Best Served Cold, you know, just a kind of like Italian Renaissance. You know, I remember arguing with Zach like a month ago how some of our problems were like that we feel sometimes that the setting of Abercrombie's world is like the least interesting character. And those moments where Joe can like introduce these things that we haven't seen before, like Italian Renaissance city-states feuding, or this Western pastiche, or as we have now, you know, this sort of industrialist. Best Served Cold.
What about you, Greg?
I enjoyed the trilogy, like Brett said, but I can't pick one out of them. But I really enjoyed the standalones more than the series because the series,
I'd agree.
It was your journey. Like we have to get to this place, and then we have to get back, and then there's bad stuff happening.
Right, a journey with no end.
But like I didn't expect to like the standalones as much, but Best Served Cold was great. Like I think I remember more specific scenes from that, like the poisoning of the banker, and you know all the backstabbing and everything. But I really enjoyed Red Country the most, I think. Or the Heroes, I can't pick between them because the Heroes I loved Shivers as a character, and I love anything with the Dogman, but I love Westerns, and I didn't expect there to be a Western because it's like a medieval world to me, and they don't have guns yet, but you know the way he like took the Western aspects and made it in this world, I thought was really smart. And Temple, I love Temple because he just reminded me of me a little bit.
Totally.
And it's so much like Deadwood. It just felt kind of like Deadwood.
Right.
You know, they like show up and there's feuding on the two different sides of the street kind of thing. And
Costco. Anytime Costco shows up.
Costco. Yeah.
Costco.
Yeah. And I know he's probably like 90 years old in the contemporary series, but you know he's going to show up at some point.
Let's hope.
I just finished that. Doesn't Swarbrick murk him?
He stabs him in the chest, but
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, but he died like 4 times.
That's true. Yeah. For the first trilogy, I also had like I didn't really like fully get into it until the 3rd book. That's where I was like, oh god, this is actually something really cool he's doing here. So for me, I also think the standalones are the best parts, and I'm gonna be boring and also pick Best Served Cold. That is the one that I also like the most. I'm doubling up here, but I love Monza Mercado as a character.
Yeah.
I also love Nico Koska. The scene with him with the goat like looking over the battle is probably my favorite moment in everything. Just like him delaying and just showing like his tactics as a mercenary is just so good. He's so funny. Like he's probably is my favorite character. And yeah, that book, I think, like you said, Alex, probably has the clearest sense of kind of a unique and cool setting to it that I really enjoyed, and that is something that he does sometimes struggle with, I think. Abercrombie does. And I hope desperately that we get to go back to Styria at some point. I love
Friendly's a
that place.
fantastic character too.
Friendly, there's so many good characters in there. Like
Friendly. I forgot about Friendly.
Friendly's great. Obviously, Call Shivers is one of the best characters through the whole thing, and it's so cool to see him change. And I think this is the moment when all that kind of starts in a cool way.
I think I told you guys he was the guy that I was like, why does he always tell people what he's called every time he's introduced? He's like, I'm Cold Shivers. And then with like the sixth book, I'm like, oh, Call is his first name. I'm Cold Shivers. Made me feel silly.
Yeah. Yeah, so those are also my favorite characters. What about you guys? Any other characters that you really enjoy?
I don't like Baez.
Well, we'll talk about him.
I can't pick favorite. There's so many I love so much.
Yeah.
They're all so good. I mean, there's probably even the ones that I don't like, I like because I don't like them. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like Greg's talking about with Baez. I love how hateable he is. He's such a
but how also
villain.
likable he is at the same time. Like
Yeah.
when you first meet him, you don't necessarily hate him. He seems very down to. Even in this book, if this was the first one you ever read, you'd be like, Baez seems all right. I don't know why they're all so scared of him.
That's what's great is you slowly realize, wait, this guy is a fucking asshole
And a monster to boot.
Totally, yeah.
I like
one of the best
play
things
on that though.
Oh, for sure. Any other names that you guys want to throw out? Logan is one people talk about, of course.
Everybody likes Logan. He's like the Tyrion. I mean, not physically, but like in that. I assume he's a fan favorite. I always like the Dogman. I know he wasn't really was he a POV character in the original series? I don't even remember. Yeah.
He was like the POV character for them.
Yeah. So, sorry.
But all the Northmen are awesome. Like that whole group. I like Black Dow and Tall Duru.
I loved Wearin of Bly. He was probably my favorite. Like,
he was amazing.
Yeah.
You hyped him up to me. You were like, "Have you met Wearin? Gotta meet Wearin. You're gonna love him."
There's a story with him in the short stories that's pretty good.
I don't think
actually two of them. They actually get the first time that group met him. Like he was first thrust into their dozen.
I really like the old guy in the Heroes who like went off to live on a farm at the end, who I thought was Clover, but wasn't. Craw, yeah.
Throughout Temple, Orso, and Savine as well. I don't have any like strong relationship with some of the main characters from the original trilogy because, how do I articulate this? It's like I don't conceive of them as like a unique like character, more so as like this is Joe's like response to a very specific archetype, like the evil cripple or the barbarian antihero, et cetera, and like I can appreciate them and like they're charming and funny and all that, but I don't know, they're not as like unique as Savine, like a climbing socialite, like in a female socialite in a fantasy novel. Like, she's just so much more interesting.
I definitely think he took a turn in this book to a more like female-led cast, and I'm not having any issues with it. I'm enjoying it. I'm glad he's doing that.
And I think the characters are just more likable in some ways. To me, I think they're just kind of easier to root for. Yeah, it's probably not going to get
because you pointed this out to me because they're all so young. They're kids.
They're innocent.
They're not.
Right.
Yeah, they haven't tortured or murdered so many people.
Yes, they're on the way to that.
Like
versus someone like Glotka, we see him kind of at the apex of that, and I do love him as a character. And I think he is actually a pretty unique character in a lot of different ways. But we do kind of see him after he has become what he is, and that's not going to change. Which, like I said before, I like, but it's not the traditional character that you typically kind of root for. Alrighty. So I think we talked about this already a bit, but is there anything you guys would say additionally about how you would sell these books to someone listening who hasn't read any of them yet? Like, what would be your thing you would say? Like, Greg, you're a bookseller. How would you sell it?
I kind of just use Brett kind of like I summarized or paraphrased what he said. They're just fun. I mean, on the surface, I don't say on the surface there's not much going on, but it's like, if you like Game of Thrones, if you like, just good fun fantasy, these are super fun books. You'll read them really fast. You'll have a lot of fun. And they're, something like that.
So you go to them and be like, well, you don't seem like a thinker, so these books are for you.
I put on the sign, it's like, hey, dummy, Potato chips, read this book. Yeah, so that's it.
I think if I were to like recommend them to someone, I actually would still recommend. I would recommend them go through them like I did. Like start with Best Served Cold. If you don't like that, you're not gonna like them. And if you like it, move on from there because, like I said, they don't seem to spoil the other books.
I think there is something special about going chronologically and kind of seeing how people like Shivers develop. But I agree that if you want to just get hooked immediately, the first book is not going to get you probably.
I don't think
as
so.
Easily. Yeah, I think.
No, I am agreeing with you. I was saying I don't think so to you.
I understand. Yeah.
I would say that rather than fantasy that is in the Tolkienian model of mythic, lofty, sort of religious scripture almost, this is more a throwback to like Robert E. Howard, like sort of pulpy adventure serial. If you want the sort of, maybe not swashbuckling, but just the sort of adventure, like dark fantasy romp, then, it would be the way to go.
I agree, but I do want to stress that, like, if you want happy endings, like, you're not going to get them. Just want to stress
Spoiler
that.
alert. Jeez.
Yeah. It's not going to happen.
Don't know that, guys.
It's not going to happen.
Sarah got everything she ever wanted. I don't know what.
We'll see about that.
Right?
Yeah. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and talk a little hatred. And before we get into full spoilers and everything, I just want everyone to kind of do their spoiler-free review on this book with a rating. I was thinking of like what our lemon cake replacement could be. I had stuff like Kernsbeck engines or like pinches of pearl dust.
Amber said fingers out of 9.
Yeah, it's much better. So let's do. How many fingers out of 9 would you give a little hatred, Brett?
I think I'd give it 7. I enjoyed it a lot. It's very good, but I want to leave room for better. So I'll give it a 7.
And how does it compare to you to the other books?
To me, they're all between a 7 and a 9. So I don't think it's the worst one of them. I just don't know how else to.
Yeah, they're just kind of all on the same level for you.
Yeah, like they're all really good to me.
Fair enough. Yeah. And did you did audiobook or?
I did audiobook for this. Yes.
Gotcha. With as we talked about in the pre-show, Stephen Pacey is the narrator for these, and he is very good, for sure. All right, Alex, how would you rate A Little Hatred?
Out of 9.
Out of 9.
I do not.
I would
This
say
makes my head hurt. Just so you know, I hate this.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Twitching a little bit. I'd say for all the previous 6 books, I would give 6 out of 9, except for Best Served Cold and A Little Hatred. Both would be 7 out of 9.
All right.
And you talked a bit about how you do generally enjoy the POV characters here.
Yeah.
More so than past ones.
Much more so, yes.
And we'll get into that a little bit more. All right. Greg, how would you rate?
There were parts of his book that I absolutely loved that I was like, forgot what I was doing as I was walking around listening to it, but there were parts that I did kind of zone out to. So I would overall, out of 9, I guess 6.5, 6.25 out of 9.
And a couple knuckle bones. What?
Yeah, I don't know. But no, it was really enjoyable. Like it's the first of a series, so it's going to take some time to get to know the characters and the story. Because for the first half of this book, I was just like, oh, do I know that guy? Oh, do I know her? Oh, who? That's clearly that. And I was wrong about most of them. And also these characters all reminded me of Gunner's kind of like Logan, like from the previous series. So it took me a while to like separate them into their own, like they're their own characters. And some of them are literally the children of other characters that we already know. So there's that too. But no, it was super fun. And once like stuff started rolling, it was even better. But it was just a little bit of a build up.
I think I'd feel the same way about the first one of the original trilogy. If I was just rating that one after not reading the rest, it probably wouldn't be super high for me. But that one with the rest, actually, it elevates it a little bit. Does that make sense?
I don't even remember what happened on the first one. Did they get to the place they had to go to in the first
Logan, no. It ends with Logan and Pharaoh fighting all the practicals. And then they get to the ship and Baez blows the dude up. Right before they leave on their long journey to nowhere.
Okay, all right.
With Brother Longfoot.
Oh, Brother Longfoot, I forgot about him. He was so cool.
That was weird.
That is not me being racist. That is exactly as he sounds.
Yeah, that's the voice that Casey gives him.
Okay. And you did audiobook for this as well, right, Greg?
Yes, I did. And this is the first one of the Abercrombie books that I've read faster than like 1x, because I didn't discover like you could do 2x until after I read these. So they were a little faster paced, and the characters sound a little different. But it was
once you go the 2x life, you can't go back.
I can't do 2x for most things. Like
it's like
this, I think I
teeth.
did at 1.75. Like 2 was just a little too fast for me. But I listened to Bruce Springsteen's memoir at like 3x because he was such a slow talker.
I can't even imagine how fast that would be. Oh wow. Yeah, and Alex, you did half and half, right, with reading an audiobook?
Yes, audiobook when I was commuting and driving around, and then reading, whenever I was home.
Yeah, and I did full reading because I'm not a heathen, obviously. No, I'm just kidding.
Some Back Bay Philistine.
I'm just kidding. I love audiobooks, for sure. So yeah, I would rate this. I'm gonna go with, like you said, Brett, probably a 7 out of 9. It's definitely throwing me off. I would say 8 out of 10 if it was traditional. And like you said, Alex, I'd put it on the same level as Best Served Cold in terms of my tiering of all the books. I put it up there as well, and I think that's impressive because of what we talked about with being the first book in a trilogy. It's very difficult to immediately engage you and get you interested in what's going on, and I think that was a struggle in the original book in the first trilogy that he put out, and I think he does a little bit better job here, kind of like engaging you with the conflicts and the characters and getting you interested in what's going on. He doesn't really do a great job like setting up what's going to come next. Like that's kind of just an open question at this point, which is an interesting choice. There's some cliffhangers in there for sure, but it's not like, all right, we're going to go here and do this thing next. So that's an open question that I'm obviously curious to see what happens. But yeah, I think the big standout thing for me is, like we talked about, Alex, is just the POVs, the main POVs in this story. I just love them. Like I'm such a fan of them, and I just thought their stories were interesting, and I like the conflicts that are being set up with them and the traumas they're gonna have to deal with. I'm just excited about all of that. And when I put the book down, like this is a rare thing that happens, I was like, oh my god, I miss these people. Like I miss reading about them, which is not a thing that happens every day. So I think that's the big thing that I took away from this one, and that's why I enjoyed it so much. So yeah,
I kind of feel that way about all of his books. I've read them all so many times, or listened to them all so many times, just because I love the characters so much and want to go back and revisit them.
Ugh, we get it, Brett. You like the books. We know. Can we move on? Jeez.
Simmer down, Brett.
I don't like it when you guys team up on me.
I got scared for a second there because I thought like he was actually really angry at me for joking about that.
Stop it, Greg.
I'm glad you joined in, so he's now angry at both of us.
There we go. Perfect. All right, so at this point in the podcast, we are going to go full spoilers for A Little Hatred. We're going to talk about everything that happened in the book and what we thought about it. So if you do want to read this book and you don't want to be spoiled, that is your warning to shut it off. So we've been talking about this, obviously, and setting this up. Who is your favorite character in A Little Hatred? Who's the person that you came away like, oh, that person's awesome. I can't wait to read more about them. How about you, Brett?
Is Brett going to get to go first every single question you
Should
ask?
I mix it up, Greg? Greg, how about you? How about you, Greg?
My time to Greg.
How about you, Greg? Who's your favorite character?
Gunnar. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Yeah. Seriously?
No, he is my favorite. I expected to like Savine more because I liked Glocta so much from the first ones, but yeah. I realized she reminds me of some of my customers that I don't like that much.
Fair enough.
Yes.
That's going to be published.
She's too high society for you.
No, just in general, just like some of the attitude a little bit.
Her alpha bitch
from the old stories to work at, obviously, not the current story I work at. But
of course.
Yeah, but no, I really like Gunnar because I like Logan, so he's like the controlled rage and everything, and he's really just a big sweetheart. And I like the fact that he wore glasses. I thought that was cool. He's like this big brute who's like the first guy ever to be able to afford glasses in his family. And like Orso, he grew on me a little bit. Yeah. Leo, I didn't like. I mean, Rika I liked, but Leo I did not like too much. I just never felt like he was more than what we thought he was. Mm-hmm. And I really like not Clover. Yeah, Clover. Yeah, I really
Clover.
Liked he was great.
Leo is just budget Rob Stark, man. Yeah. That's all there is to him.
Well, he's a POV at least.
Mm.
All right, we're just gonna go reverse order then. Alex, who's your favorite?
Savine, man. I love her alpha bitch personality. Just being this socialite, social climber in this industrial society. How conniving she is. How she's daddy's little girl. How when she's in Valbec, she's like, please God, if you just get me out of here, I'll be I'll be kinder and nicer, and then as soon as she's back in Adjoa, she's back in the game, and nothing's changed. I don't know. I'm really invested in her.
She is great. What about you, Brett?
I really like Orso because he's so self-deprecating, and he seems to hate himself, and you don't really know why. And he tries. I like how flawed he is as a character, yet I still kind of root for him to succeed. And at the same time, I want to say or Ricky, whatever you guys want to call her.
It's neither one of those, actually. Try again.
Anyway, I like the way her character is written, and I like her thought processes and stuff like that. So she's very interesting to me.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun. Yeah, I think for me, I'd say Orso as well. He is definitely someone you aren't immediately attached to. He's this character who is this spoiled prince who just spends all his day, drinking and whoring in the same way, actually, like a character like Tyrion is. So maybe there is something to latch onto there. But I just love how self-aware he is, and like you said, Brett, how self-loathing he is. Like, I love the idea that he is this person in this position of, potential power, but he just hates it. He hates the circumstances that he's in, and he's clearly, a competent character, someone who can do things effectively, but he's kind of convinced himself that he's nothing. And I love that as an idea, and he's obviously also very funny and just cool in that kind of superficial way too. And I find him so interesting. I think he was, to me, the most compelling character in terms of who they are and who I think they're going to end up becoming over the course of the series. So I loved him. I also really like Savine, and I think for me, like, I really liked all of like the main four of them, and Ricky or whatever the fuck her name is, and Leo.
Ricka is what they call him in the audiobook.
He's wrong. Anyway,
doesn't mean it's right.
Anyway. If it's higher. Exactly. And yeah, I think the other ones aren't quite as good. They do have cool moments, and I'm curious to see if he'll continue with them moving forward. I think he will with some, but they're kind of more secondary POVs. It feels like Clover, Vic, and Gunnar. But they're a lot of fun as well.
It almost seems like that he wants to give you a view into the world from a different perspective, but doesn't necessarily want you to fall for the character, because he doesn't give you a lot of them, like, inside, like he does the other ones. Maybe Vicky does a little bit, but definitely not Clover.
No, we don't. We even having his like third person POV, we still don't really know Clover, and we get a reveal obviously at the end that he is not what we expected. I think. I
expected that. I got that.
Oh, really?
The whole story, like, you've got to blow with the wind. Like, he was ready to switch sides when he was talking to Shivers, I think.
I'm kind of curious if he might be an eater.
Oh.
Just that conversation.
We'll get to that. We'll get to tinfoil hat speculation.
Well, he talks about taking people's places. Shivers does. He's like,
yeah, it's possible.
I'm not saying it's true. I've seen fucking eaters in every corner in this book. So
sure. It's like Secret Targaryen, secret eaters for sure.
Right.
They're actually a faceless man.
Yeah.
Actually, I have to say my favorite character was the lawyer, the naked lawyer, who I hope is okay.
Oh, God.
Or something with an R. What was his name?
I can't remember.
Radagast, something like that. He's like, I'm a good guy. I just come here and pay these women to have sex with me.
You're
take care of them. Why are you making me do this? How
did they show their appreciation? Well, who am I to stop them?
It's true. So with Clover, we can talk about this for a sec and kind of just cover him. So the moment we're talking about, of course, is the moment at the end where he kills Scale, and he kind of goes over, or he kills Wonderful after Store kills Scale, and kind of goes over to Store's side of things. I'm saying that name wrong, I'm sure.
Can
Store,
we all
whatever.
Please say the names correctly?
How do you say it?
Stour.
Stour? That's
Stour like sour. Stour. How do you spell his name in the book?
Stour.
Okay, that's Stour.
Stour.
All right. Stour kills Scale, and Clover turns around and kills Wonderful. And I think it's interesting because for me it was unexpected, because I think, to me, Clover, if we're talking about like analogs to previous characters, felt a lot like Kerndon Craw in the Heroes.
It was him.
Yeah, exactly. Who is a character who I think of the characters that we get is, very much a likable person. He, of course, experiences his own kind of trauma and difficulties, but he is someone who's like a fundamentally good guy, you feel like. And it felt like he was going for the same thing with Clover here, but you kind of realize, actually, no, this guy's more of a opportunist than he was.
He's a survivor.
Yeah.
He's not going to give up. He's going to make it. Isn't that the song? That's one of those songs, isn't it?
I'm pretty sure that's a song somewhere.
Is that a Destiny's Ladies song or something like that? I forget.
Destiny's Ladies.
Destiny's Ladies. Yes, I think
That's what I get for trying to sing modern lyrics. Anyway, sorry.
Stick with Beethoven. All right.
Beethoven doesn't have lyrics.
I know. That's why.
Alex, I assume, is the Beethoven guy of this group. I'm not the
Probably.
Beethoven guy.
Nope.
I love that
talking
Greg
about the
says
movie with the dog.
Destiny's Child is modern.
For me, it
Sure
is.
as well. Good point, Amber. Thanks for jumping in.
Thanks.
with that.
That's the one thing you're going to say the whole podcast.
All right, so we've talked a little bit about Clover.
Can I just say that he was not super compelling to me because we've already had, like, in Casca, right, these like gregarious, affable merc type characters, and like they're cool as like secondary characters, but as far as like a main POV, like it's just not super interesting to me.
I don't think
It'd be
the main
like if
POV was for him.
If Brown Ben Plum was like suddenly a main point of view character or whatever, you know what I mean?
Like I said, I don't think he's a main point of view character. I think he's made to give us eyes into that camp, not necessarily to show us him. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, if that's the case, I think Alex's point is still valid, though. Like, why? Because you want a character to still be a character, right? Not a camera. So I think that is a valid criticism of him, and I think I like the moment at the end, but he definitely was not someone I was like, oh yeah, Clover, a new Clover chapter. I can't wait to see what he does. Absolutely. And with that, let's talk about one of the POVs who I think it has that problem of maybe like being too similar to a past character with Gunnar. You mentioned Greg that he was your favorite. So what do you think about him that is a standout aspect?
I mean, I like any character that's kind of like trying to avenge his fighting for his family and, who are being stepped on by the lords, that kind of thing. But he just reminded me of Logan, with the controlled rage and stuff like that.
Uncontrolled rage?
Well, he's trying to control it a little bit.
He's trying.
No, he just uses the character. He's the first character that I at least click with. It's like, okay, I get this guy. Like, I get it. The other ones I took like 4 or 5 point of views to be like, what the hell's going on?
Until he started talking about, like, oh, I buried my father here. Like, we've lived here my whole life, that kind of thing. I actually thought he might have been Logan.
Well, me too, yeah, because
it's like redoing himself, because he's always pulling his arm up in his sleeve, but it's to hide the tattoos, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I like the concept and I like the circumstances here, and right, he's this guy who really only succeeded as a warrior in these wars in Styria, and he has to come back home, and he's kind of a mix of actually Kerndan Kraw and Logan in a way where he is trying to kind of reclaim this life, but he comes back, and he's actually kind of our best intro into the setting, which is this kind of early industrial setting where the world is changing, and we're moving on from like being a farmer and you got to go work in the city, so that's the circumstance that he finds himself in. He has to sell or kind of flee from his land because he kills the people who come to claim it from him, and go live in Valbeck, which is one of the major city locations that we get in the story, and he quickly realizes that he doesn't really fit here, and he, as one does, kind of falls back into old habits where like the only thing you're good at, it's fighting, so he's going to go back to that. And that's what he does. He joins the Breakers as a kind of enforcer for them, eventually ending up as an enforcer for Sabine at the end of the story, and that's just his lot. That's his skill, and he has to do that. So I find that cool, but he didn't really jump off the page, and definitely he was limited by the fact that you are constantly comparing him to these other past characters.
Part of the trepidation I have for making a sort of judgment about what these characters are at this point is that for the original trilogy, like, the cool thing is that Joe sets up these like archetypes in the first book, and then like the reveal comes like at the end of the trilogy. Oh, the character you thought was Gandalf was actually Saruman the whole time, and the barbarian anti-hero with this supposedly should have a moral code. He's a ruthless bastard and is probably the worst of them. So some of these characters like Gunnar and maybe even Clover like as well, I just sort of have my eyes narrowed, like, okay, 2 books from now, when's the reveal gonna come? Like,
I would say we got those reveals though with these 2 characters. I'd say Clover, we got
really.
It
You
with
think
his
so?
moment.
Yeah, with
I do think so. I think that of those things that we're talking about in terms of them showing their true colors, I think we saw that with Clover, and with Gunnar, I think we see it in that final scene with Savine, where he kind of does commit to like, yeah, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna be this person, and even though my wife desperately doesn't want me to go down this path, like I gotta do this, like this is my life, you know. I think that was his reveal.
It was kind of like Shivers in that he tried out just being a working man and then realized, hey, if I would just be a brawler, I can get paid way better and I can actually support myself.
Shivers didn't get to that point until like he got tortured and his eye pulled out.
No, he did.
Oh, he does
like,
before that. Yeah.
He was trying to be a better person, and like he just couldn't be because he couldn't survive in Styria with what he had for tools.
Yeah.
And then she came along and was like, look, I'll pay you money to kill people for me. And he was like, all right, that's a lot of money, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Now, to be clear, I'm not saying that there are not new revelations we're going to have with these characters over the course of the next few books, but I think we fundamentally understand who they are at this point. To me,
Right.
I think we do get that. All right, so last kind of secondary character we have is Vic. Vic, who happens to be Vic Dan Tuffle, who is one of the people that Glotka tortured her father was one of the people who Glotka tortured in the first series, sent off to the mines in England. She was born there. She grew up in those kind of horrible circumstances, and in an interesting move, eventually ends up joining the Inquisition as one of the people that, you know, sends those people off to England and does those torturous things. We initially meet her. We think she's actually part of this group of breakers who are people who are kind of fomenting rebellion in this industrial world, not happy with the circumstances, the status quo. They're kind of like Marxists or whatever you want to say, that kind of thing. But we realize she's actually a double agent. She's working for the Inquisition, working for the man, and she eventually helps to secure the city of Volbeck after it falls under the control of the breakers. She plays a key role in that. Thoughts on her?
I like her. I think my like knee-jerk impression of her was, oh, this is female Glocta, you know. It's this kind of this stooge for the Inquisition, but I think it'll be interesting whether, you know, how she's divided between that loyalty or like maybe being sympathetic to the breakers or burners or whatever.
I think she's better than Glocta as far as like as a person.
Morally, yeah. But she's so like locked down internally, it's hard to get a read on like how she actually feels.
I think you see it in like her saving that kid because he's like her brother, and like she doesn't want them to be caught. She's telling them to run away. I don't know. I feel like she does care about what they're doing, the breakers, and I think she wants them to succeed, but she's got to do her part to survive.
Yeah, I think for me, there's some seeds of interesting stuff with her, especially what you're talking about, where she does save that boy, and he's, you know, still living with her. They're kind of a package deal at this point, so it's interesting to see how that develops and how he maybe becomes kind of a weakness for her in the same way that what's her name, Vitari's kids became a weakness for her in the first book. So I'm curious, like, kind of how that develops and how that kind of challenges her as a character. But yeah, at this point, we don't really know too much about her. We know she is just kind of a, like we talked about, a kind of a survivor, someone who is doing what's necessary, and she makes some big moves in terms of advancing the plot. You know, she is really the one who positions Orso to be able to get the breakers to back off. So she is important in that respect. And I'm curious, especially if she does end up, like Alex is saying, being kind of a new Glotka. I'm curious how she approaches that and how she climbs this kind of tenuous political ladder in the Union. All right, let's jump into some of the main POVs we get, which are the unpronounceable, whatever we said. I can't even remember how you guys are saying. Rika, whatever. Let's talk about her for a second. So Rika is a character from the north. She has the long eye, which means that she can see the future. Essentially, she has prophetic dreams, and that cause seizures. She is kind of looked after by the daughter of a character from the original trilogy, Crummock Ilfail. I don't know. That's however you say that.
He's the character that I thought his name was. Crummocky Fail, like Crummocky
Fail.
Crummocky Fail.
His daughter, who carried the spear back then, is all grown up. Cerny Fail. She's kind of the caregiver to make sure that Rikke, whatever, is okay.
I realize why I hate this. It's not that everyone says someone you say it different. It's that everyone says it differently. So we can all pick one, and then we can all say that.
Rika, she is the daughter of the dog man, who Greg mentioned how much she likes, and she is kind of seen as this kind of like princess of the North. It feels like she is kind of someone who everyone kind of loves. She's a very likable, immediately kind of person, and the characters show that. And over the course of the story, we kind of see her navigating the circumstances in the North, which is this war against Stour, whatever the fuck. He has come to kind of claim the Union parts of the North, that protectorate that they have, and she kind of assists with her prophecies and also just like her wit to in that conflict, and she eventually ends up in the Union in Adua. And we see kind of, how she's going to develop there and how she's going to have to deal with that as well. So what do you guys think about this character?
First, I'd say Long Eye doesn't just see into the future. It more sees without the constraints of time. So because she sees the past and the future simultaneously. So it's not like just seeing into the future. And I don't really enjoy prophecy all that much. And I hate that it's like a little puzzle for you to put together. And I'm glad he like knocked out half that puzzle already in the first book. But I enjoy her character. She's very interesting. And I like how she interacts with other characters. She's just herself, especially with like Shivers, who she puts to tears, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Not easy to do. Especially because he only has one eye to cry with.
Damn weeping jelly.
Yes. Other thoughts on Rika?
I like her as a character, I guess, but I'm not super impressed how her abilities have been used so far. They've felt kind of gimmicky and as a way to like drive the plot, especially with the Leo Stour duel and like just this mechanism to like see these prophecies for the reader to puzzle out.
Yeah. Gimmicky is her uncle. Gimmicky fail. That's her uncle.
I'm gonna boop your nose.
Yeah. I mean, I think she's a very likable character. Off the bat, I think that she is someone who, like I said, like I just loved reading her chapters, and I felt sad when I couldn't see what she's up to anymore, because she just has this great sense of humor, and like you said, Brett, she just is so herself and so spontaneous in the way that she behaves. She's just fun, but she's probably the character I have the most questions about moving forward at this point. The most questions about kind of what are the conflicts that are going to motivate her, what are the things she cares about, what are the things that she's interested in and is going to work to achieve. I think I don't really understand that yet. She does, prominently have this relationship with Leo Dan Brock, who we'll talk about, which kind of falls apart at the end of the book, and she ends up in bed with Orso, one of our other main characters, and kind of seeing how that relationship develops is interesting, and how she kind of becomes a person who can operate in other circumstances, although it seems like she's going to head back north at the end of the book. We'll see if that actually pans out, but it seems like that's where she's going. But yeah, I like her, but I don't think I fully get her yet. Alongside Rika, we have Leo, which is an easy name. Thanks, Leo. Leo Dan Brock, who is the son of Finry Dan Brock, who was a prominent character back in The Heroes. She was one of the major players there, and she is now kind of the de facto leader of England and kind of this northern protectorate, because her husband has died at this point. She's the one leading this war effort, being awesome, and her son Leo is one of these noble warriors trying to win fame and glory, and some of the tension there is kind of him being reckless and trying to prove himself, and she being kind of a tactical, more conservative person who's trying to make sure he doesn't die, of course, and that things are successful. So Leo, that is kind of his main motivation at this point in the story, proving himself in this battle against Stour. Ultimately, he does duel Stour at the end of the book and wins thanks to Rika's help with the prophecy stuff. She tells him to sweep the leg. It works pretty well. And that's where he's at. At the end of the book, we again see the falling out with him, and he ends up in bed with Savine. Reversal there.
Yeah, hilarious. That was.
I don't think they ever
really
made it to a bed.
there.
Yeah, maybe not. But yeah, what do you think about Leo? I think we talked. He's maybe not the most interesting at this point of the main POVs, but what are the thoughts on him?
I think the Robb Stark comparison is a good one if we're making Game of Thrones connections.
Mm-hmm.
He reminds me a lot of Giselle. Just the way he goes about, like, he thinks he's better than he is, and he always is making the wrong decisions, and he doesn't realize he's gay.
That's a big part of it. Yep.
Well, I think
He is in the closet.
Bisexual.
Clearly
Bisexual. You're right, bisexual. But I don't think it's even crossed his mind to be bisexual.
Yeah, he's like that. He doesn't know that that's a thing. And who's his friend who's like clearly into him?
Which is so sad.
Who's like, hey buddy, I'm right here. Like, I felt so bad for him when like he was taking him like up to a room, and he's like, "What are we doing here?" He's like, "Oh, I'm meeting a lady." He's like, "Oh."
Well, he's like,
I'll just go home then.
he's just like, I don't even care why we're like, I don't even care if people talk, because he thinks he's like going to be with him, and I just, my heart broke for him a little bit. I was like, oh man.
I
thought this was for you.
lose respect for Swarbrick as an author. He just lets people fuck in his office when he's gone, like ruining his papers and desks.
Is Swarbrick even around anymore? Or is it just like
He's probably been dead for years.
Yeah, probably. One of my options for lemon cakes was letters to Swarbrick, or letters from Swarbrick.
That would have been a lot easier than out of 9.
Which is, of course, the secret sex location meetup spot. Yeah, Leo, I think there's some interesting stuff with him being someone who's kind of trying to live up to a standard, especially with the aspects of him kind of being in the closet like we talked about. Like, he has this perception of who he's supposed to be, and I'm curious to see how that's tested moving forward. And I think that there's, again, cool seeds of character there, but at this point, not too much going on. Alex, do you want to talk about his gay romance with Stower?
Oh, so this is not my theory. I came across this from Westeros.org, but people were talking about how the political alliance between Leo and Stour could be matched with this actual sexual relationship in the manner of Achilleus and Patroclus from the Iliad.
That's the fancy way to say Achilles, guys.
As these sort of youthful warrior lovers. I don't know. I kind of like that idea. I have no idea if it will come to fruition, but it would certainly be an interesting dynamic.
But we do know that in the North, it's not like frowned upon particularly as much as it is elsewhere. Correct? Being gay.
Do we have any example of it?
I thought there was some exchange with some character where she's like, it might have been Ricka or Isern was like, I don't care what the hell.
Ricka didn't care. She was just like, oh, you guys holding each other? That seems pretty manly to me.
Yeah.
Versus Leo, who we see clearly it's a taboo from his perspective. So that's an interesting aspect of it too.
Yeah, he's like, oh, that's gross. That's disgusting. And I'm like, do you really think that? But his whole thing, how he's never comfortable around women, and he like doesn't really see much in them, and
he's a man's man.
He's not a boob guy. He's like, they just don't impress me. Yeah. I don't know what all the fuss is about.
Mm-hmm. We'll see with him moving forward. I had that feeling too with Stour.
Well, he keeps losing his friends. Like, it seems like every chapter he has a point of view of one of his friends dies, and he. The first one seems to hit him hard, but after that, it's just like, oh, yeah, I guess he's gone now, too. Oh, he could have protected me. Maybe I should use his sword.
I noted that as well, like just the idea of him being tested by that and kind of how his idealism maybe starts to crack and he becomes kind of this practical commander. Like even his friends are going down in battle, and he's just like, that happens. It's gonna happen, So I'm curious about that as well. All right, let's go ahead and jump into the next pair of characters, which is Orso and Savine. We'll start with Savine. So Savine is the daughter of one of the main characters in the original trilogy, Sandan Glotka, who is now the Arch-Lector, and he basically runs the Union. He's basically the guy in charge, in front of the actual guy in charge, who's biased. But Savine is, kind of trying to blaze her own trail here, not stand in the shadow of her dad. She is a like Alex said earlier, a socialite, a social climber, and she is a very successful investor in business. And she is definitely the person who is exploiting these new opportunities in this increasingly industrial world, and being very careful with how she spends her money, using her various advantages to help advance that. And she is doing very well for herself at the start of the story. She is clearly one of the wealthiest people in the Union at the point we meet her. But things kind of go sour for Sabine halfway through the book. She goes to visit Valbeck to kind of visit one of her mills, I think, there, and she is caught up in the uprising there, and is forced to run and hide and insinuate herself actually with Gunnar and his family, and basically live as one of these poor people that she doesn't really like so much, and has to kind of see things from that side. Ultimately, she is saved by Orso as he lifts the kind of control of Volbeck that the Breakers have, and she doesn't really, kind of see the error of her ways. She kind of commits, like, I'm gonna make sure this never happens to me again.
Again.
to not let those circumstances happen. So, which I really enjoyed. There was this kind of feeling that she'd be like, oh, I understand now how bad they have it. I'm gonna change my ways.
Compassion for the little people now. No.
Hell no, no way.
Well, she did for those three.
Yeah, sort of. Even though she's currently employing Gunnar to do a thing that he's trying not to do.
She doesn't really know that.
It's true.
He never tells her, I'm trying to be a better man here.
I'll just check in. Can you guys hear me?
He needs to communicate his feelings. Yep. Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, he needs to communicate his feelings.
He definitely does. All right. Sabine, thoughts on Sabine?
So she's kind of weird for me because she's such a cold bitch, but it's great at the same time. Like, usually Abercrombie makes you try to like his characters first, but I feel like he tries to make you not like her first and then try to make you like her and then try to make you dislike her again. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think when we see her at the start of the story, she's basically dressing people down and blackmailing them. Like, it's not like, oh yeah, look at this person.
She's being a business lady. She's not blackmailing them. She's just being smart.
True, she is being smart. For sure. But I like I say, like, I love characters like that. I love characters that are steadfastly committed to their ways, and I was immediately interested in her, and I was exponentially more interested in her when she was tested like that with the riot in Valbeck, and she still kind of sticks to this, although she is definitely scarred from the experience. Mm-hmm. She's not like, oh, I'm good. And we see that clearly afterward, the ways in which that has left an impression on her. And I'm super curious to see how that will develop moving forward, the ways that she's kind of been traumatized by this.
Yeah, she's got like some form of PTSD perhaps. And now she's like surrounding herself, like getting Gunnar to follow her around so she isn't vulnerable like that again. She never realized how vulnerable she was just because who her father is, nobody ever wanted to test her. And she found out when you run into people who hate you because of who your father is and don't care, you're in trouble unless you have muscle.
Yeah, she has all these tactics to kind of cultivate this image of power. She is so committed to this idea of dressing herself up in this way that makes her appear to be like the perfect lady in a way, and she kind of sees that as an advantage. But in a circumstance where that doesn't help, she realizes she needs other methods. Like, there's these other forms of power.
Yeah, she was lost
to keep exactly. Which I love that. I love that idea of her being tested in that way, and the idea of her trying to cultivate these different forms of power and trying to put herself in a position where she is always in control. And I think she will be tested again on that. Any other thoughts on Sabine?
I want to say that a video game came out this year called Anno 1800, which is a strategy city builder game taking place in the year 1800, and you have to balance your production chains for your economy and the needs of all your workers. And I was talking to you, Zach, how listening to Sabine strategize and make her plans is just making me feel the itch to go back to play Anno.
Right. She's like, we need the soap and the...
We need our soap. We need our textiles.
Exactly. She would be good at that game.
It is interesting how, like, she's very cold, but then she's like got to convince herself to be that cold.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, the interiority of this, I think there are some parallels here to like to like Cersei, I guess, and they do kind of go through a similar circumstance where they are tested, and they have to kind of develop from that. But for Savine, I think I clearly have like a lot more empathy for her after that experience than I do with Cersei, and they both do, you know, cold-hearted things, obviously, but there's something about her where she's not like an egomaniac like Cersei is. She is not like drinking the Kool-Aid in that way. She's self-aware. I think that's the key difference. She kind of recognizes who she is and what she's trying to be. I think Cersei kind of just like thinks she's the best, you know. And Sabine is less so.
Some of the way she convinces herself she doesn't care, I think that might be her father's influence, Glocta, and that she thinks she needs to be that way when we all know he's not really that way. Like he is, but he isn't. Like the face he puts forward isn't necessarily who he is. Just like it's not who she is, but she thinks she needs to be that way.
Because she doesn't see into his head like we have, and there's some kind of dramatic irony there, right?
Right.
We see he's just as uncertain about his spot, and in this book we see like anytime she might get involved with like Valentin Bulk or any of that, she's like, the clock is like, don't talk to them. Whatever you do not get involved.
They approach you, come to me immediately.
Some of these characters, it's kind of weird because or at least for me, when I started reading them, especially like Leo and Orso and Savine, they feel like teenagers, but they're really like 25 years old, right? Or 30, you know? So it's a lot of this stuff is like, I feel like they would have worked this stuff out already, especially if this is like a medieval or even like a Renaissance setting. Like there really isn't such thing as being a kid. Like they're adults, you know? But I guess because they're upper class, like they can take a little backseat to it.
Coddled and like Orso's never had to do anything.
Right, I know. And he's super self-aware more than anyone. He's like, I'm awful and I know it. But I felt like some of them I just didn't like them as much because it's like, oh, you're just being a whiny teenager. Like, this is more Leo, I guess, not so much Savine. But I did like Savine much more after like I saw how she like handled herself during the uprising and you know how she did. You know, I thought that she would fend for herself and like do whatever she needed to get through, and she basically did that.
One of my favorite parts of the uprising is when they go to like the prostitute's point of view, and she's like, well, I mean, this is all good, but who's going to pay for all this tomorrow?
Also, I didn't know that that chapter was called The Little People. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
which is a direct shout out to Les Mis, Little People. That's one of the songs which I really enjoyed.
That might be the best chapter in the book.
It clearly was my favorite, yeah.
And then when she was like, it's funny when people say they're going to make the world better, it means the world better for men, and women are never thought of. And it's quite true.
Yeah, she's not going to have an easy path for sure. All right, let's hit the last POV that we get, which is Orso. He is the son of Jezal Dan Luther. He is the crown prince of the Union, but he sucks at it. He's not happy about being in this spot.
He's actually the king of the Union.
He is the king now. Probably. We'll see. But yeah, Orso is someone who does not enjoy this lot in life. He is not happy that he is the crown prince. He is not some kind of noble, heroic figure that the common people look to and say, oh, that is our prince. Look at him. He is the exact opposite. Like we said, he is someone who, whores around. He's a drinker. He's constantly waking up with a hangover, basically, and he doesn't really have any purpose in life. He's kind of directionless, and that's kind of what he's searching for in this story, is some kind of purpose. He kind of realizes, okay, I need to kind of do this crown prince thing here. So he sets out to do that and ends up being the person for the job of dealing with the uprising in Volbeck, and actually succeeds mostly because of Vic, like we talked about, but actually pulls that off, but not what he wanted. What's his name?
Pike.
Pike and Sulfur go and crucify basically a bunch of the people, and he's kind of pinned for that. So his heroic moment is kind of dashed in that way. People still don't think much of him. Leo's the real hero, but he does kind of take a step forward in the story as far as actually being like an actor, someone who takes action. So thoughts on Orso?
Can I ask a silly question? What is pearl dust? Is that like snuff, or is it like cocaine?
It's like cocaine.
I think it's cocaine.
Yeah.
And is snuff the same thing as cocaine? I've never really known. I've never known. I know there's snuff boxes, but like, were people just sniffing cocaine
Greg,
in like
the 18th
century?
I don't know if the group of us are like hardcore drug users.
No, but it's like a history thing. Like, I feel like I should have known.
I don't actually know what snuff is. That's a good question.
Wait, do none of us know what snuff is? I would feel so much better about myself. I thought it was tobacco, but I'm like, why would you just sniff tobacco? That doesn't seem like that would do anything. I don't know.
Snuff is a smokeless tobacco made from ground or pulverized tobacco leaves.
Okay, so it's not cocaine.
Oh, it's like a chew, right?
But you sniff it. to cut this out.
It's fine. No, we learned today. It's good. Yeah, but pearl dust is definitely cocaine. I think. For sure.
So with Orso, I like the way his character is written. Like he's very self-aware, and I feel like he's sabotaged himself because he doesn't think he's good enough, so he doesn't want people to expect him to be good enough. And by lowering their expectations, it makes his life easier.
Yes, certainly. He plays to expectations, and he has this line that kind of runs through the story. This idea of like circumstances conspiring against him to do the right thing.
Right.
That's very much kind of, I think, the key idea of his character is that the world is making life hard for him. It's not his fault. It's never his fault exactly that the world is just constantly making any circumstance where he's trying to be better not tenable.
Whenever anything gets hard, though, he just seems to give up really quickly. But then again, he does do like the fact that he fences twice a week or whatever. Like he doesn't want anybody to know he does because that might subvert their expectations of him.
Wouldn't want that.
So it's interesting that he does like grow. He has character growth throughout his life, but he doesn't want anybody to see it. And it's very interesting to me why you would be that way.
I had this very hostile knee-jerk reaction to Orso. I was constantly dismissing him as, oh, this is just Prince Ladislaw as a point of view character. Just this complete, foppish nobody. I think his interiority kind of rubs me the wrong way because I guess it would remind me of myself sommes where,
I would kind of agree with you. That's the way I feel about it.
It reminds me of you for sure. Yeah. No, I had the same feeling, right? Like you kind of have that feeling like that.
I hate myself so much, and that punishment. I'm punishing myself. Therefore, it's okay that I'm not doing anything productive.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to get into our own little psychology session here, but I did feel the same thing, right? Like he is a very relatable character in that way, where he does feel like he has to never overreach from his circumstances. He has to be He has to be who people see him as being, which is this loser basically. And that was cool. And when you mentioned to me he's Ladislaw, I was like, no, he's the opposite of Ladislaw, right? Where Ladislaw is someone who sees himself as the prince in all ways. He sees himself as someone who can take anything he wants.
He's
and Prince dandy. Orso is yes. And Prince Orso is the opposite, where he doesn't think he deserves anything. It feels like he thinks he's just unworthy of everything he has, and he shouldn't be in the position he's in.
How could you feel worthy? I guess is how I would put it. I don't know how you could feel worthy of being the heir to the throne of one of the greatest kingdoms there is, or empires, you might even say.
Yeah, but what we know of Giselle, I would have thought that he is not a particularly overbearing father. And the little glimpses we get, it seems like he genuinely loves him and is not going out of his way to be an asshole about it. So I think it's more either coming from his mother or just himself, of that he's not good enough or anything. But we don't really get
his mother, who conceived him only because she was threatened to do so by Glauca. That's not a fun relationship.
My heart kind of broke when he was he intentionally loses to Giselle just to make him feel better. That was really sweet.
That's actually kind of what made me like him, is that he was willing to do that a little bit. And he's nice to Giselle, who's dead now, by the way. So that's the next interesting question with Orso, right? So Giselle has been killed by Baez? What's
Obviously.
going on?
What else was Baez doing there?
So Orso clearly is someone who I think Baez sees as being a more either capable puppet or someone who can be more easily controlled. I can't see how it would be the latter, because Jezel's like a sock, basically. He's easy to control.
And he knows Baez's power. He's scared of Baez. Legit.
So what does Baez see in Orso that makes it seems like he's setting him up to be the king and to control him. So what is going on with that?
Perhaps he sees him as someone who can bring the commoners back into the fold because they seem to be rebelling, which it kind of hints that he might be part of.
Right. We can
get to that later.
The Weaver might be, etc.
I don't know what Baez is not the big picture is, but even whatever the medium picture is, because he seems to be wanting the Union to lose a little bit in the north, wanting them to lose, just not get too big for their britches, but also he's the patron saint of the Union, and he's keeps saying stable Union, stable world, and all that. So I don't know why he necessarily wants unless he's like bleeding them for a greater fight, which might be what's happening.
Well, I think he might be
Which
setting.
he does. He does do that. That's the thing in his tactics.
He might just be setting them up to be, because Giselle, the shine's kind of off the apple with him. Like, people don't like him, and people don't like Orso so far. But I think he feels like maybe he can turn that, because he always seems to have his fingers in all these pies, and like he pulls out the one that he wants to pull out when he pulls it out. Like, it's hard to explain.
I've seen some speculation that Baez is setting up Orso to be the Louis XVI in this scenario, where the scapegoat for this populist revolution that's going to happen, where, you know, Baez can reorganize the polity of the Union.
Do we know if he knows about Savine being Giselle's daughter, or are we assuming he doesn't know that? Baez?
Does Baez? I would assume so.
I think he does. I mean, fuck. I mean, what's his name? Can read people's minds.
Seems to think he doesn't, though, right?
It's not clear. I don't think we have clear evidence to say that he does or doesn't. But he's kind of the guy who figures things out like that. So we'll see. But I agree with you, Alex, on the idea of setting up Orso as kind of setting up as a fall guy almost. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how he's going to enact that, but his actions speak to that at this point, because clearly Sulfur made the deliberate choice to villainize him with
to make the
killing all those
worse.
people. Yeah. So I don't see why he would do that if he was trying to do the same thing he did with Jezzel, which is to set him up as a hero. So I think of anything, that's the direction.
Yeah, I think but Baez's use for Giselle was really used up by the end of the trilogy, because he really just needed him as like the young blood to help fight off the the southern bad guys or whatever they were. But also we don't know what's happened in the last 30 years. I assume they've been fighting wars and winning some of them, but
they've lost like all of them.
They've been losing. To Monza, she's kicking their ass.
Yeah, that's like one of them, but like I don't know, it's 30 years, so like that seems to be part of it. But what's been going on in the South, like the South seems to have fallen apart, the Southern Empire, and that's one of my complaints with these books overall, is that you don't even get a map. There's no official map. Like, you just got to like find it. Like, I always want to know, like maps. I know that, and I respect that. I just don't like it.
Oh, you would like a map, wouldn't you? Like,
yeah.
Yes, I would.
Or even just like more bigger picture. That's why I loved it when we got to Best Served Cold, and I think even that book that we got you, Brett, doesn't that have an actual like the artist did a map on the end papers, which is really cool. I hope you still have that.
Yes, I absolutely do.
I just always
it's in a garage sale pile as we speak.
That's a $200.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I just want people to know that me and Amber spent $200 on a gift for you because you got us to read these books. So.
That is ridiculous, and you never should have. And I feel like now I should send it back to you because I'm not worthy of such a gift.
All right, so I think that'll wrap our character discussion. Let's go ahead and jump into some speculation and kind of theories for book 2 from some of the hints and ideas that we got in this book. So I think a big question for me is, like I was saying earlier, like it's not really clear what's going to happen next. Like there's not like a clear like, oh shit, we got to go over there at this point. So what do you guys think is like the next conflict or next big thing that's going to happen at this point in the story?
Well, the successions, right?
Yeah. So like the whole thing with Jezzel again, with like the council meetings and deciding, do they need that with Orso, or can they just do that?
I just think there's going to be a lot involved with it, because you see like all the I guess high lords, I don't know what you call them, but they're all council thing. They're all kind of against the throne, and I think that's going to be a big part of the future books. And
we see actually specific conspirators that are clearly working against, I think, Baez.
Yeah, redheaded
traitor lords.
Yeah.
Whatever.
There's like that redhead lady. There's a bunch of redheads through here, and I was just thinking of like Vitari and Shanked and their children. Like they'd be all grown up now.
Possibly.
Not all redheads are related, but I get why that jumps out.
They're not?
Yeah,
Wait, what? I've never met one, so I don't really know.
We know they don't have souls. So we can establish that.
I assume there's going to be all like the internecine fighting with like the small council and the lords and stuff, but that stuff we've seen before. I think it's also leading towards, because like Baez mentioned several times how like his squabbling siblings, like I had to get them under control out west and stuff. So it's gonna go back out there, which is kind of where it started anyway. With what's her name, the crazy lady on the coast to
Carneo.
Yeah, Carneo.
She's one of the siblings
and
he's
then,
talking about. Yeah.
the other one, which I assume wasn't Kalu's yet. Yeah, okay.
Cauliflower.
Yeah, the guy who he's like where the old like empire is, like in the Middle West somewhere.
He's
right?
Radagast, man.
Yeah, he's got the bird.
He's like scuffed Radagast. A mess. Yeah. So you think we're heading west then, over to the old empire?
I don't know. Could be. I mean, they take your pick. Like Styria's in pieces, but I don't think Styria's going to invade the Union. They're just kind of like want to kick them out. But
yeah, I think I'm kind of hoping, because I love Styria, like I said, I hope we get to go there again. But it doesn't. There's no like evidence at this point that that's where we're going.
Well, if we're already a third of the way through, like I don't think we can go to Styria or go to this. It's got stuff coming to them or like stuff that they've already mentioned. So, I don't know.
But like Jaco Mercado was mentioned, and I think he might have some future in this.
Jaco? Who's Jaco?
It's Monza's son.
Monza.
Oh. I think it's Jaco, right? Was it?
It might have hit the book. I don't even remember.
Japo?
Hell if I know. I don't know.
Yes, it's like Japho, right?
Japo. Okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, I feel like if we are going to see Styria, it's going to be like the Leo Star Alliance, like punitive expedition. Like we're going to turn our focus outwards and deal with that enemy instead of fight each other.
Yeah, I think that's plausible, and I don't know how long that alliance will last, but I think we'll at least get those kinds of actions for a bit. The question for me there is, what is the motivation of the North to get involved? Like, what do they stand to gain? But they'll probably come up with something.
Plunder riches.
Yeah.
Do you think?
Which is not something they've done before, but.
Do you think Yolwei will return?
He's Pharaoh. He's one of my favorites.
He was trapped in the.
He's trapped in the tower.
I think. Yeah.
He was trapped in the tower with his daughter. Not his daughter, but the Master Maker's daughter.
Not a good person to hang out with.
Yeah, but I feel like he could talk her down. He just has that way about him.
I have no idea what you guys are talking about. I remember him stuck in, like, he was like, get out. He's like, I can't, you go. And then the door closed. That's all.
Yeah, Baez left him. But they were
Because he's a fucking...
Oh, Canadian daughter, right? Is that the name? Canadian?
Yeah, Canadian's daughter.
Yeah. And she was like crazy?
Yeah, well, she was left for dead.
Right.
But
she
was
made
dead.
A pact with the other side, so she's like a demon now.
Yeah.
And I think the only person that could probably kill her is Pharaoh at this point, if she can be killed.
I think we'll go back to the House of the Maker. I think that's very...
I think it was interesting he never mentioned it. Like, even when they were coming into town, I fully expected him to bring it up, and he never even mentioned it.
Look at that tower there!
Well, it's the biggest tower in the whole city.
No, yeah, I agree. Yeah, maybe that's the point. Like, maybe Baez is just like, I'm not fucking with that shit anymore. I got money. I got all this shit. Like, I'm good. Well, maybe that's what's going on.
Well, he kind of defeated his enemies as far as the magic goes, so...
I'm skeptical about that. We'll talk about that in a second.
Well, I think there's eaters everywhere, like I said, and most of those worked for Kahlua at one time, so...
Yes. So before we get to that, let's talk about some of the Rika prophecies. Those are some of the prime areas for speculation. So first one we get very early in the book is this idea of the wolf eating the sun, which I think is just Stour attacking the Union. Then a lion eats the wolf. That's probably Leo defeating him. Then this is where the question opens up. So then a lamb... What are you laughing at?
Alex has a different interpretation of the lion eating the wolf.
Yeah, that could also happen. It still could. This is like the prophecies in the Song of Ice and Fire. Like, there's multiple interpretations. Absolutely.
But I thought the beauty of these books is that they're not deep, and you don't have to think about it.
There's no ambiguities at all.
This is going to be some deep stuff.
Lion fucks the wolf. Lion. Great. Lion eats a steak, and then
I guess my question would be, who is the owl?
Well, so actually, are we certain the lamb is Orso? I want to cover that.
Well, they keep
first.
calling him that, but it could also be Logan.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, is it Logan?
Yeah, but I don't. If the wolf, sun, and lion are who they are, it's so like obvious. Like, why would the lamb be this? I don't know.
All right, so in that case, then the owl is Rike.
Do you think so?
If we're just doing that, I would think. And the only evidence is like she has big eyes.
Well, I would actually say Eastern has a better chance because like her dad's crazy as a sack of owls. Like she's the only one that's ever been associated with owls before.
On the moon, and yeah.
Well, I think it also could be a character we haven't met yet, if none of us really think it's anybody. But
I'm gonna go with Rika. That's my theory.
Okay.
All right, we'll lay down our bets, and you say Isern.
Well, I don't know if I'd say a certain,
I'm
but
going
yeah,
with
I think it's a
character to be named
possibility.
later.
I'll give you 3-1 odds. All right, we can end with that for now, unless anyone else has any thoughts on that one. Other big one we get later in the story is the idea of the bald weaver with a purse that never emptied. This is connected to the idea of the weaver being the person who's fomenting the Breaker Rebellion, being the kind of the mastermind with that. We get someone who comes forward as the weaver, the dude,
That weird French
noble
monk.
guy. But I think we all think he's not the weaver,
Well, he
right?
says he's not the Weaver.
Yeah.
He says
he mentions he talks to some dude who he admired or was awed by. Yeah. So who is the Weaver? So this is the info we have. They're bald. They have a purse that never empties. Baez is the obvious choice, which is why I don't think it's him. But is it him or is it someone else?
Like Alex just said, the rest of them have been so obvious. Why wouldn't this be? These books aren't for thinkers.
I guess so. I guess these are books for babies.
I'm gonna face palm into my mic right here.
Baez is the Weaver.
Well,
are there any other?
Not Baez, because whoever the Weaver is seems to be at odds with him.
Well, unless he's like playing both sides.
Right, but that seems like why? I don't know. Maybe I don't put anything past them, so maybe. But I don't think so. Also, it's a clear. It could be. I mean, they want you to think that it's the Weaver, but it's too on the nose. So
Well, I mean, I definitely think that Judge is an eater. I don't know how that plays into the whole Weaver thing, but
who's the eater? That you think that who's
the Judge?
I think
the
Judge
burner leader. Basically.
Oh, Judge. Ooh, that's interesting.
That
she
woman?
seemed a little too She was one of the few characters that seemed unrealistic to me. I don't know. She's too
eaters are not
crazy
realistic,
to
so maybe
be like that, but I don't know. Just seemed a little
too crazy to be a political revolutionary.
Yeah, where did she have time to read about this?
She didn't read Marx. What's she doing? So yeah, any other ideas? I have a really weird one, which is probably not gonna happen, but I thought it could be Savine because she's bald and she has money.
Yeah.
but
I like that.
How would that be? Because she obviously she's not the Weaver right now, or she'd know that.
Right.
Maybe she will be at some point. That's my weird one.
I mean, Glock is
possibly.
bald.
Is he?
We don't know.
Well, he has wisps of hair, if anything. But
it's not a wispy weaver. It's not a wispy weaver. It's a bald weaver.
He also probably has a purse that never ends because he got all that money from Valiant in bulk, and I'm guessing he never really spent it.
Yeah, my tinfoil is Savine as the Weaver.
But however, they're and he was in a fucking wheelchair. And you know anybody about that?
So this is the one I actually have no idea. I have no clue who this is. So she also dreams of that same part of an old woman whose head was stitched together with golden wire. Is it? Oh, I guess. Yeah, that makes... Fuck! I did not guess that.
One to me.
It's Monza. All right,
I don't know what you're talking about, so please explain to me.
Monza got thrown down the mountain, and Shank stitched her back together, and she has gold pieces in her skull.
Yeah, I forgot that? All right, that's Monza. Moving on. All right, last prophecy. We get this at the end of the book. A white horse prancing atop a tower. Alex, take it away.
So there's this fan theory that Shanked is in fact King Casimir the Great, because his name is Cass. He says he doesn't kneel. He hates Baez, and whenever Baez talks about Casimir the Great, supposedly one of the greatest leaders, he has nothing but contempt and loathing for him. So Casimir's sigil is a white horse. So if Shankt is in fact Casimir, then this prophecy might be foreshadowing Shankt returning to Adjua to bring the pain to Baez, which I cannot wait for.
So please
I think that's true.
Refresh my memory. Shanked, I thought he was human and then became an eater recently, but is that wrong? He's much older than
He's been an eater the whole time.
He's been an eater forever.
Well, I don't know about forever.
But he's been around. I think he's been around.
Atari, they were lovers, and then he became an eater or something.
No, but Shanked has been around for a long time. Okay. I think, right?
Yes.
He's been around almost as long as Kahlua and Baez.
Okay.
I don't know if it's that long, but I think he was the second generation of the Magi, or eaters, I guess. I'm kind of hazy on what the difference is. The Magi are between just the first ones.
Well, an eater is the people who break the second law and eat the human flesh.
Right, but Sulfur is a Magi. And
But it's not. It's like a rectangle, circle, or square thing. It's like. Hold on. Let me explain it. Not every magi is an eater, but not every eater is a magi. That's
okay.
It. They don't have to both be one or the other. You choose to be an eater, but being a magi is just like being a part of this order of people that came from. What's the first guy's name? Who died?
Juvens. My brother, Juvens.
I still am curious, like how. Obviously, we don't know, but like how the magic works. Like, why are eaters? Why do they need to do that when people seem powerful without it?
Well, eaters give them like superhuman strength and like invulnerability. Basically, like they have these specific things they get from.
But they're all different. The gifts are all different.
True. But it seems like, I mean, this is the thing, right? That the actual like magic that magi have sucks, right? So like being an eater is an advantage, I think, over that. You know, some like bias can do things, but it's so costly to them. Whereas being an eater, it's more like a cost on your soul because you're eating people. But yeah, it doesn't seem like it has the same negatives.
Well, and they talk about how they don't taste anything anymore and nothing. They don't have feelings anymore.
Right. That's the cost. Like, you lose all your emotions and stuff.
Yeah, you become a vampire basically.
So yeah, I think I agree. I think that this is Shanked, and I'm curious really with Shanked moving forward because he is really kind of like the third. He was the third power player along with Baez and Kahlua. He's like the third party who can mess things up for Baez. So I'm curious to see.
He's the non-Republican or Democratic candidate.
Yeah, exactly. He's the Green Party of this story. Yeah. So I'm super curious to see with him, and I think you're right that this prophecy speaks to him going after Baez, who is the tower.
Yeah, I didn't realize his sigil was the horse thing. That's interesting. That definitely pulls it all together.
So many times in this book, man.
This book?
Yeah.
Yeah, they like tear a statue down in the uprising, right?
Yeah. All right, so some random other ones that I just like saw in places. So, like people want to figure out like who Hildy is, who is the girl who pals around with Orso.
I think she's just a girl.
Thoughts,
I think she clearly is someone's daughter.
Well, she has to be, obviously. So some people thought it was Orso because basically it would give an interesting kind of dilemma for him if he found that out.
He's not old enough.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah,
well,
I don't think it.
I
agree.
Is technically old enough, but like I don't. I think
how old is she? She's 9, right?
I thought she was like 6.
Yeah, but if he was
run around.
if he was fucking when he was like 16, like it's plausible.
Well, he's like 25. She's like 9.
I just said if he's fucking when he's 16, it's plausible. Do the math.
I don't think he was like a late bloomer by any means.
Exactly.
But anyway,
I guess it's possible.
I did like Hildy.
Yeah.
Is there an issue? Is something amiss? I think that's what she says.
Yeah, she is great. Yeah, they have a really good vibe for sure. Reminds me kind of like Scott Lynch, Gentleman Bastards, sort of. She feels like that kind of like character. All right, so Friendly was another one that got thrown out for her father just because she counts something or something. Numbers. Yeah, she counts things. He passed that down genetically, his desire to count things. I don't know, maybe.
Friendly's a fantastic character. I could use some more point of view of him. I just enjoyed him.
Exactly. I'd love him to come back. So let's do the is someone an eater question. I have is Zuri an eater who is the aide
absolutely
to Sabine.
I think that's
she is so eater.
Everyone from the south is possibly an eater.
Yeah,
she is so eatery though. She's so eater.
I love it when he's like when somebody's saying like oh, you let the Southerners in? I thought those were all eaters. Well, if they could take any form they want, wouldn't they be white people?
Yeah, I feel like that was Joe speaking directly to the readers. Like, obviously, she's not an eater.
Oh, she's definitely an eater. She's too perfect to not be an eater.
Exactly. It's just too.
And her brothers walk in and they're like, "Hello, we have big smiles and teeth." I don't think he ever said that, but that's how I pictured it.
That's the other thing too. Is she actually does gnash her teeth at people. So.
And she does everything too perfectly. She's a fucking.
She's just good at her job. Like Sabine has people that are good at their jobs. I think we're looking at.
She's the only one though.
No, the face maid. I'm just a face maid. She was a very good face maid.
She was awesome at her job.
Yeah, she did a great. She died like she.
Yeah, Broad. He's doing a good job.
All right, who else do you got, Brett? Who are the other eaters? You mentioned the judge.
I definitely think the judge. I guess I didn't see him everywhere, but just like the judge, I thought was clearly an eater. Just the way she was acting, and she could kind of like see into people, like she did with Doofus. I think.
Wait, you called him Doofus?
Yeah.
Did you think he's a doofus? I like him. He's not a doofus.
He can still be a doofus.
Disagree. Anyway, continue.
I think there's a chance that Clover could be just because of what Shiver said about taking people's forms, like taking lives or something like that. Taking lives that aren't your own.
He's got way too much personality to be an eater, I think.
I think they actually have good personalities, most of them that we've seen.
I don't know. Aren't they all like very like distant and cold and I don't know.
They all kind of like play with their food and stuff, so that happens. They got a sense of humor about it. So here's a big one for me. So we hear about how Kahlua was killed by a demon, which we all think is Pharaoh,
yeah.
right?
Clearly.
Now the question is Kahlua actually dead?
Well, they don't know. They said he might have killed her,
he's...
or he survived and barely, and he's on the run.
Do we know?
Do we think he's
any of the Magi actually die? Like aside from like the first generation, like
oh yeah, Bentjar, whatever the fuck is Cracktooth? What was it?
Who was that?
Cracktooth or whatever. He's dead. There's a handful of them that are dead. Hold on, I'll look up their names.
I don't remember Cracktooth Benji.
It's Chatty the Dead.
I just remember Cracktooth. Definitely there was a Cracktooth.
He's like a brother of, or one of the Order of the Magi, or he's like one of the older generations.
He's one of the older generation that died in the wars between.
I googled Cracktooth first law, and the first law of thermodynamics was the first result.
Well, that makes sense.
Oh yeah, obviously. And this kind of thing that sucks about this this fandom, I guess, is there's not like a lot of good like fan material, like a Song of Ice and Fire, where there's just like a thousand articles about everything.
Well, that's the problem with everything being kind of on the surface that you don't really get.
I'm mostly sad there's not like a lot of fan art. I love fan art.
There's some really quality stuff.
There's some.
Yeah.
I want some for this book though, like now. So give it to me, please.
Didn't they do a graphic novel of like part of the first book? I remember seeing like pictures of Glocta, and he was just this like blonde dude that I was like, that is not Glocta.
That's not my Glocta. Are you sure that wasn't Giselle?
No, it was definitely Glocta. Yeah, Kane. I think you sent it to me. Somebody did. Who else would send it to me? I can't remember.
I don't remember sending you anything.
So yeah, I think Kahlua might be alive. And I want to see what's going on with that.
I don't think I care. He was such a non-character, non-antagonist in the first
that's the
trilogy.
thing, right? Like
just this Sauron abstraction lurking on the horizon.
And this is the thing Abercrombie does, so maybe, but like it feels like such an anticlimax though if he's just never got to make his move.
Which is perfectly fine for me.
He did make his move.
Yeah.
Kahlua, he attacked the Union with everything he had.
Yeah, I thought he wasn't done though. Like it felt like there was still a chess match after that, but whatever. You're right. That's definitely he's definitely an anticlimax writer.
Okay,
for sure.
I have a list of the original 12,
unless
of
we're
which
talking about Sabine.
Only 9 of them are listed. So there's.
All right, wait. Before you tell us, let's say how many we can get between us. So, go ahead.
All right,
obvious ones. Wait, are we kind of like Kahlua, Zacharias,
Kahlua, yeah.
Baez?
Those are both. Yahweh, Kahlua, Baez. Those are like the obvious ones. The 5.
Kahlua.
Yep.
Is like Canadius and Juvens, or they're not considered the major?
They're higher level.
Okay.
Yeah, they're upper.
Yahweh.
That too. We said Yahweh.
Yep, he's one of the 5.
When you got Zacharias, right?
I think that was all of them.
Well, that's not all of them that were mentioned.
Who's Cracktooth?
Broken Tooth. It's Broken
I think that was
Tooth.
all of the ones that show up in the story.
So Canadius killed Broken Tooth and Anselmi. So neither one of them ever were on screen. Carnault sailed across the wide ocean, and Leru has hidden herself away. Those are the other mentioned ones.
And there's 3 non-named ones.
Yep.
Okay.
And then we have apprentices like Sulfur.
And Malachus Kwai, I guess.
Oh, I forgot about him.
He's gone.
He died early on.
He was an eater, right?
No, he just was replaced by
Ishri is still out there.
Canadis' daughter.
Who's that?
Ishri.
She sounds vaguely familiar. Who was that?
Ishri's the one that was wrapped in bandages all the time.
Oh, she was the
kept
one in the
appearing
north,
out of nowhere.
The witch?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
No, the witch in the north. Well, she was in the north for the heroes.
There's two. Yeah, there's 2 different ones. The first one died. And Shanked something.
Yeah, Shanked is around.
Yeah. That's all we got. So, yeah, any other random theories or ideas that we want to talk about?
I just want to say, for the first trilogy, like the layout for like what the plot was going to be was so clear. Like, oh, we have our quest to go get the seed, and like we have to go do this thing. And then, we would have the characters interacting and, where the fun and the joy is. But things are so open-ended, like at the end of this first book, like there's like no clear trajectory at all, like where we're going. And that's exciting to me,
Yeah, I agree. It's exciting. It's just very untraditional, I think. There is a cliffhanger, but it's really not one. Like, we know what's going to happen, basically, with it.
Oh, you think you do?
It is such an... Maybe, yeah. It is an open question, which it's a bold move, and I like it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the surprises in this. Like, I did not expect. I mean, I wasn't surprised that Clover killed Wonderful, but the way it happened is like did not expect it in that moment or that specifically to happen. And that took me out of it. And also, I was so into this book that I thought there was like 3 more hours left because I just got so into the last couple chapters. I was like, oh god, I can't wait for the next chapter. When Giselle died, I'm like, oh, that's it. I was like, actually, like I crumple. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Because now I got to wait a year for the next one.
Hey, relax.
At least it's 1 year.
No, but because the audiobooks also, because when you listen to them fast, like I'll glance at it and be like, oh, I got an hour and a half left, but that's really like 40 minutes.
When you're going at 5x speed, it's like 2 minutes.
No, but like I just actually wanted to be all mushy, but like actually thank Brett for getting me into these books because they are some of the most like fun I've had listening / reading a book in a long time. Like I don't get into it. Takes me a long time to physically read a book because I fall asleep when I read all the time. That I really enjoyed these, and it opened up a new world of books that I probably wouldn't have read otherwise. So thank you, Brett.
Oh, you are welcome.
I'm sure
you're all welcome.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Brett.
Craig, you said thank
right.
you with a $200 book, apparently.
Well,
That's crazy.
I split it with Amber.
That's a nice.
And
thing.
I bought it on the secondary market. I didn't spend $200. I said it's worth $200. So.
Oh well, then I guess you could have gone a little more, huh?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a whole trilogy out there. You buy me one book, thanks.
They're signed limited edition. They'll go up in value. I know someone who can consign it for you if you ever want to sell it. Don't worry.
No, I'm good.
All right.
Thanks, though.
All right. Yeah. All right. I think that's a good place to end. So yeah, thank you everyone for joining me for this. I was really eager to talk about these books basically all year, but this was a good excuse to get into it with the latest release, of course. And I'm happy we did it. Very, very happy. And yeah, that will do it. I don't think this is the case, but does anyone have any future podcasts they want to shout out?
Well, I would like to talk about Gideon the Ninth if anybody wants to talk about it with me.
There's an idea.
I can buy that. It looks kind of cool.
Let me listen to it again.
Did you listen to it? I thought there was no audiobook.
Well, you would be wrong.
That's the only reason I read it is because there was no audiobook. They must have put it out afterwards.
What if Brett just read a completely different book? Like it wasn't the episode.
It'd be weird if it was still a book about like
I think I'm going to listen to it again if it exists, yeah. And I am about halfway through editing the Baker one, so but that'll be out at some point. But no,
the Baker one?
From a year ago.
Those books
when we
I
talked
used
about
to be
baking
obsessed with that I've completely forgotten everything from.
The one I couldn't make.
Those are some literary books.
No, I remember those. I remember those. Well, you're right.
Oh, I know I'm right.
There's 2 books in the Locked Tomb trilogy. That does not make sense.
It's just like showing because the next one is out next September. It says 2020 on the.
I think it's coming out in June. Harrow the Ninth. I think it comes out in June. I looked that up the other day. Yeah, June 2020 is book 2.
You know, it's kind of not depressing, but when the audiobook comes out the same day as the regular book, I'm always like, you mean you already had this done and we didn't get it? Because
they have laydown dates. That's the whole point.
I'm just saying, like, the next Game of Thrones book is going to come out, and the audiobook's going to come out the same day. And it's be like, you've had this all this time? You could just release it.
When a book comes out, like, it was finished a year ago before that. Like, the publisher had it 9 months, and then the printer had it 4 months, and then the bookstores had it a week. You know, they don't just write them the week before. But I get that. It's frustrating.
Thanks for explaining how books work.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And the author had it before that.
Yeah, they probably wrote it.
Yeah, why didn't he just release it? Why does he have to try to make money?
He should just release it before writing it, just like his notes and ideas. That'd be
Pre-order the book.
Yeah. All right. So we'll wrap it there. Thank you all so much again for joining me for this. It was really fun. If you want to check out more Vassals of Kingsgrave, you can do so at vokpodcast.com. You can check us out on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, all those places. You can rate us on iTunes if you want. That's always appreciated. And you can come chat with us on the Podcast of Ice and Fire forums. But that will be that for this podcast on Joe Abercrombie and A Little Hatred, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Take care.
Bye.